Dr. Naidu, if I can have you back. So, Dr. Naidu, while we are waiting for the attendees, do you want to tell them where you are at the moment and how is the weather?
Yeah, I'm in Joburg. I'm in a nice, cozy, cold Johannesburg. You can see I've got the long sleeves on, but I'm not envious of the guys in Western Cape. Yeah, I mean I saw 50 degrees Celsius and all those things, but yeah, no, I'm in cold
Yeah,
Joburg.
yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, same here. Same here. We've received rain. For those who are not aware, we've been receiving rain in Johannesburg. Very overcast tonight. But that overcast will not affect our webinar. So yes, I can see numbers are coming. We're sitting at 129. We're expecting around 300, 350. So we're going to allow people to go, but I want to start as soon as possible, um, so that we don't waste time. Um, yeah, we're going to give them 2 minutes. All right, I think let's get to deal with the administrative side of things while we are still admitting people, sitting at 140 at the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Casey Makubele. I will be your host tonight in this webinar in collaboration with MPS. We know them more as DP from our side, from the profession. And yeah, so the few things before I go into the lecture side of things. Please note that this lecture is being recorded, and we're going to ask you that if you have questions, please um, to ensure that you put it on the chat box, and we will take the questions either during or later, but mostly later. And if you have, I do apologize, guys. And if anything, then we will allow you to even ask questions during the time. Um, what is important that we wanted to indicate for you is that we have a Congress coming up, and unlike in previous years, we have opened this much early, much early this year to allow you guys to start paying for it, to start getting in. And we already, with the short period that we've opened, we have over 60 people that are registered. So, um, like about 3 years ago, there was a time we had to stop taking registrations because we can only accommodate a particular number of people. So please, guys, note, and you are among the first people to hear. And I'm saying to you, if you are planning to be at the Congress, try and make sure that you register and make the payment. This year, if you register and you don't pay in time, your registration is going to be removed so we can open up for those that want to register and pay. It's going to be a wonderful opportunity in Cape Town, so please ensure that you are there. Today, we are hosting this lecture, Where Do Things Go Wrong? It's a beautiful topic title. Generally, I can say that nobody wants anything to go wrong. We pray that nothing goes wrong. We hope that nothing goes wrong. We plan that nothing goes wrong. But in reality, something does and will go wrong. What then do you do when the prayers and the hope and the planning did not work? What do you do? And I think um, Dr. Naidu, that is here today, is going to tell us that. I'm not going to read his bio. He's been, he's a member of SADA. Did you pay your membership, Dr. Naidu?
Uh, yeah, yeah, definitely.
You see, I like putting people on the spot. Dr. Naidu has been a member of SADA for a very long time and a member of the Gauteng South branch of SADA. He's been active, he remains active there, as well as um, the work that he does for the MPS. Just on a side, if you, I know I didn't speak to him about this, he is with his colleague. They are running a podcast, which is doing very, very well. I have been there myself, and people, ex-friends of mine, people that I went to medical school with, they would call me, say, "Hey, we've seen you a long time," and all that. His podcast is doing very, very well, and I saw that it has now been even kind of shown and in the medical brief. Tell me about that a little bit. Medical brief with Glenda Davis.
Oh yes, so Medical Brief just partnered with us to feature the podcast, and the first episode that they're featuring is with Professor Glenda Gray. So that it was in their mailer today. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's quite
So it
exciting.
was it's doing very, very well. So guys, go ahead and register or follow them. There's quite a lot of stuff that you can learn or enjoy. Without further ado, you're getting one ethical points from today. And yeah, preferably, I think, unless if it changes, we will take questions afterwards, so that we do not cut in between. Dr. Naidu, I'm not going to introduce further than what I've just said. I'm handing over to you.
Perfect, thanks. And Casey, can you see the slides? It should say when things go wrong.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. Also appreciate the compliment about the name of the talk. I can't take the credit for that. That was your colleague Marlies who made it look good. So well done to Marlies. Glad you mentioned the podcast. I wasn't going to mention the podcast because obviously that's my personal stuff, but I want to just manage people's expectations here for tonight. And the podcast made me think of that. I mean, I've been trying to get somebody to come on the show for a while. And eventually he said to me, you know what, thanks, Yash, but it's not for me. But we appreciate the entertainment and keep on entertaining us. And I know they meant it as a compliment, but I didn't know whether to take it as an insult or a compliment because my goal is not to entertain, it's more to, I don't know, educate and inspire. But yeah, so why I'm thinking of that now is like today's webinar is totally practical. You know, it's got nothing to do with anything technical or any medical legal or dental legal concepts that we always talk about, like all those usual beneficence and things like that. But I felt it was so important because now that I do this kind of work on a daily basis and virtually almost sometimes alone, I miss my colleague Alistair, who's having a great time in retirement, I believe. Um, I've come across a few hiccups and hurdles that dental protections members face when they're trying to ask us for assistance. And so I figured let's just do a really practical webinar tonight. So by the end, hopefully you'll be able to know how to use your dental protection, also known as DPL, when it counts. So I wanted to set the scene first because there's also a lot of confusion. Well, what I've picked up is there's a bit of confusion as to who dental protection is and where they fit in. Now, DPL has been around for 60 plus years. Um, and by virtue of the fact that it's been around for so long, it's become sort of like the generic term for professional indemnity in the country. So people will use us just to refer to any form of indemnity. Now, there are many different forms of dental protection in the country. There's many different companies that offer this. Um, my goal where I work at DPL is not to sell the product. They still treat me independently as the clinician, former clinician that I am, and as the lawyer that I am. So it's not like they've told me to come here and plug DPL. Kudos to them for that. But DPL is a company on its own, dental protection. And it's not SADA, it's not the HPCSA. Sometimes people mix those two up. Uh, I don't work for SADA. I work for a company called MPS South Africa Services, which is based here, and is a subsidiary of the Medical Protection Society, which is based in the UK. And what I really want to drive home is that we don't make the rules. So when a lot of people come to us, when members come to us and ask for help and guidance, they sometimes think that I have all the answers. And I'm going to be open and honest. I don't have all the answers. It's actually why I love my job, because oftentimes there's no real right or wrong answer. Uh, One person, one member, one dentist or an oral hygienist or whoever can come to me with a very similar question that might end up having a very different answer from me based on how we look at the matter and what we actually see. I really mean it when things are dealt with on a case by case basis. Of course, there's going to be the standard things which most of you nowadays can find on Google or any of your LLMs that you use. Like, for example, how long do I need to hold on to clinical records, those kind of things. But where we fit in is more when there's a nuanced matter, and there's not always black or white answers, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is our job, or my job, is not to enforce any standards. Like, don't come to me and ask me for the final say on anything. Um, I'm just here to support you as a DPL member. So you might be a member of SADA and a member of DPL, but you might not be a member of DPL. You might be with another insurance company, and that's fine. And I get I get happy when people tell me they've got some sort of indemnity. That's the most important thing to me. My colleagues need to be indemnified somewhere. I really honestly don't care where. I would prefer it if you would here with me, because then at least I can help you personally. But if not, then go to your other indemnifier, let them help you. So that's the second thing, right? And then the third thing is also based on this webinar, and the question is how to, and the title is something along the lines of how to make the most of your dental protection. I'm going to be speaking specifically about dental protection in the true sense of the word, not in the colloquial or generic sense. Because if you're with an insurance company, they might have very specific reporting rules and obligations, and you need to familiarize yourself with that if that's applicable to you. And what I say here is not gospel; it's just general advice. But yeah, that's the goal, right? So the HPCSA makes the rules. I'm not here to enforce you. I'm not here to judge you. And to be honest, my personal opinion really doesn't matter at all in any of these issues that you come to me with. So when there's a clinical, when you've got a clinical issue, and you come to me and you ask me, yeah, should I have done this or should I have done that? It's irrelevant. A lot of you are way more experienced than me clinically, and so I would actually defer to you often, or I would say, well, let's speak to an expert. Let's get a specialist input. I'm not there to second guess your clinical judgment. We really work together and collaborate. And that's what the next slide says. We're in your corner. And I genuinely mean this. This is not marketing speak. The goal is to defend your reputation and to protect it. The second bullet says I'm not a lawyer. I actually am. I'm an attorney, but I'm a non-practicing attorney. I used to practice at a couple of the law firms, but as soon as you leave a law firm in South Africa, the rules are that you become a non-practicing attorney. So that's what I am. Some of my predecessors and colleagues are not trained lawyers, as in the technical sense, but they have a background in legal matters, right? The third bullet's important because a lot of members come to us and just say, Yash, thank you, please deal with it. Please speak to the patient. We don't do that. We don't deal with patients directly on your behalf. And I'm not sure if SADA does that either, but I can tell you we don't. That's an, you know, we're not authorized to discuss things with patients. So when you come to us, let's just say you remember you come to me, I'll have a call with you, we'll have a Teams chat, we'll speak about it, we'll work on a strategy together. I don't ever dictate things. That's not how it works. You've got to buy into it, and then we implement the strategy. And then the last bullet says, you know, DPL is discretionary indemnity. We're not an insurance company. And genuinely, we always look for reasons to help as opposed to not. But there are specific instances where we need to help. I just want to check something here. So, and there's a message which says my internet connection is unstable, but Casey, you'll just jump in and let me know if there's any problems. I'm just going to keep
Yeah,
on rattling on. Yeah.
where you cut off, I know you were looking for something, so we're still fine, but you did cut off
Okay.
just briefly.
Okay. 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 Perfectly. Perfect. You just stop me if anything happens. But yeah. So here's another thing I wanted to talk about. Most of the cases are not about catastrophic dentistry, and this always surprises the clinicians that come to me. You know, the vast majority of cases I deal with come down to communication. So it's a breakdown between the clinician and the patient, and expectations not being managed, the patient not feeling heard. Um, Sometimes a clinician will send an email in frustration. So the stuff that I deal with is hardly ever really clinical, although it feels like it to the dentist or to the clinician that comes to me, because when a patient complains, you feel like they're having a go at your clinical work. But if we dig deeper, and sometimes I have to write 2 or 3 letters to a member before the point gets through, is that actually what they're not complaining about what you did here technically. They're just unhappy with all the background stuff. So good dentistry on its own is not enough. It's a lot about communication, and that's where I feel like I add a lot of value to members, um, because we just take our time and we work out how we're going to respond here. So these are the things that the dentists and the clinicians think get them in trouble, like technical mistakes and clinical errors and bad outcomes. But I mean, I think there is a Q&A box, which I can't see. But I would like to ask, I mean, Casey, maybe you, what do you think causes the most complaints that we see at DPL? I kind of
Um,
gave it away. Yeah.
my sense is how well, overall, besides the actual treatment, I feel I have been treated by the health practitioner, the staff. I think that makes me, and I'm using me well, and what I hear, become sensitive to even small things afterwards, more than what the actual treatment is. I think with the treatment of most of the patients, we don't know what is right or wrong. But then I will complain because you did not treat me well when I got in there, when you the receptionist, the all of those things becomes a problem.
100%, 100%. Basically what you're saying is communication breakdown. See, look at this slide, right? Those are the 3 things that we genuinely see, and I'm not making this up. I've got a colleague in the background here, Roslyn, who maybe you'll see her later, but she started looking at the dental matters because she came over from the medical side recently, and it always amazes my colleagues who only do the medical work how very similar almost all dental matters are. It's hardly ever clinical stuff. It's almost always, sometimes it gets a bit boring. It's almost always communication breakdowns, patients not, patients' expectations exceeding what can actually be given to them, like reasonably, and, how it unfolds afterwards. So yeah, I mean, this slide I wanted to talk about because many members have a vague idea, and I wanted to be very specific about this, right? Because dental protection, the name sounds all encompassing, but it's not necessarily that. I mean, it's more than just claims, right? Now, a claim is also, I don't like that word because it's kind of an internal technical word. A claim to us means when a patient gets a lawyer and that lawyer issues a summons and serves it on you. And that summons has the particulars of claim, a long legal document, and it usually ends off with a prayer for damages of X million or whatever. That's what we call a claim. But DPL is more than just claims. And actually, I hardly ever see claims. I can count the number of claims I'm dealing with this year. Not even, yeah, I mean, only a couple, I'm actually only dealing with two or three just this year. Now, you would think, we're already in March, right? But we hardly see claims in dentistry. But that's not my bread and butter. The next slide is going to talk about the bread and butter almost. Well, here's the official slide, and you can see it's the world's leading protection organization. All of that stuff you can read later or watch it later, and it gives you access to all these things. And we go beyond all that stuff. I'm not going to repeat it, but I want to just highlight in bullet form what we help with. Right? So dental legal advice, and and any time is an important thing because you should be able to call our advice line 24 hours. Um, and it should be picked up. I mean, if I don't work 24/7, obviously, and I don't go on after hours calls, but our advice line does have an after hours service, and it should work. Where if you call after hours, you might go through to somebody in the UK or elsewhere who will help you as best as possible on the line. But worst case scenario, if it can wait till the next day, they will pop me a note and say, so and so requires a call back, please call them back or please write back. Or they'll ask you to write in. So that's the advice line. Then almost 90% is patient complaints handling. So you get a complaint, you come to me and you say, Yash, I've got this complaint. How do I respond? What should I do? The third bullet is probably the most important one. And we see it at DPL. We see HPCSA complaints and HPCSA matters. We call it regulatory matters internally. But we see those as the most important types of work or the most important type of matters that we deal with on members' behalf. Because if you get sued for money, the worst outcome that'll happen is you are ordered by a court to pay damages for X amount. And if you're indemnified, your indemnifier will pay that and you move on with life. But when it comes to the HPCSA, the consequences can be drastic. You can potentially not practice and not earn a livelihood. And, you know, that could have a knock-on effect if you want to go overseas. Those councils or those regulators will ask you a similar question in all jurisdictions to say, have you received a complaint or an adverse outcome at your local regulator? And then they'll ask you for details. So it can have a far-reaching effects. So that third bullet is the most important one. Legal representation is the next one. That doesn't always happen. We don't we don't rush to get lawyers on board, but we won't hesitate to get lawyers on board if necessary, if the matter requires it. Because and I'll talk about it later, so I'm not going to get into too much detail, but that's another thing. We can get lawyers on board, and DPL has got a great panel of attorneys who do this kind of work day in and day out. It's virtually all that they do. Um, and so even for non-members that come to me and ask me, Yash, I don't have an indemnifier, who can I go to? I still recommend them because that's what they do every day. Reports, not as common as in the medical side. I used to work on the medical side also, but the medical doctors often get asked for just reports on their treatment randomly. That could be another lawyer asking them for a report or a patient saying, give me a report or whatever it is, and we help with that. I do that in dental matters sometimes, but not as commonly. What also falls under reports is at dental protection is when a patient asks you for copies of their records, then we open up a report file. We call it that. And doctors often come to us and say, well, this patient wants their records, what do I do? And then the first thing I say to them is just give it to them. Do not delay. Because if a patient is entitled to copies, but then sometimes there's a lot more complication and nuance to it, and then we work through it, right? And I want to emphasize we work through it together. You never come to me. I hope you never come to me and get the sense that Yash has just told me what to do. Like my goal is to make you feel like it's your decision, because ultimately it is your decision. Whatever we do, DPL cannot dictate to you what needs to happen. We can give you advice, um, but that's as far as it goes. Unless it's a claim, then you're obliged to cooperate more stringently. And then the second last bullet there says claims defense, and I've touched on that. That's if you get sued. It hardly happens, but it does sometimes, especially for those clinicians that are involved in cosmetic or aesthetic work, high value claims. Generally, dentistry doesn't warrant the involvement of the lawyers, in their opinion. So they'd rather go chasing after the higher value claims. And I say that tongue in cheek, it's a joke, but that's what we see. It's a really small claim, so it's not worth it. Reimbursement of fees is the last bullet, but it's one of the important ones, one of the more important ones, and it's what I feel is one of the unique things about dental protection is that we don't require you to wait for a summons. So if a patient comes and complains and says, I want, give me my money back, some insurers might say to you, well, have you gotten a summons? No. If not, okay, let's wait for that. We will engage proactively with you, the clinician, and we'll interrogate because we are clinicians. And I'm not the only dentist at DPL. Obviously, I've got people in the UK that I can bounce ideas off with, and I do. And what we do is we look at the matter, we look at the clinical issues, we'll consult with you, and we'll figure out, look, are there vulnerabilities here? If this patient were to escalate, are they likely to succeed if they take it to court? Because if that's the case, why would you benefit from us delaying things? And why would we want you to prolong something that could be resolved at a very early stage and that can prevent other things from happening, which I'll touch on later. So reimbursement of fees is something that we can help with, and it's one of the more fulfilling parts of my job because we help a lot of dental members with reimbursements of fees. Discussion, I have to touch on this. I don't want to get into too much detail. I'm not the expert on membership and all that stuff, but basically all I want to say is that we're not insurance, we're a membership organization. You're a member. When you become a DPL member, you're a member. You're not a client. And even though assistance is discretionary, I can tell you I see this internally. The default position is always to try and help, even if we know that the matters are sometimes what we call out of our scope. I will write to a clinician and say, look, I'm sorry, I cannot help with this because it's not doesn't fall within the scope of your membership benefits, but have you considered speaking to SADA or any other association that you might be a member of? Or here's a list of lawyers we use. You can choose whoever you want, but these are the guys we use. You're welcome to brief them, or signpost you. We don't want to ever leave you feeling like you just came to us and we just said cheers. Okay, so that's just the point I wanted to make there. And then I touched on this earlier about the HPCSA. I said we see it as one of the most important types of matters that we deal with, but it's also our broadest scope. And in my 5 years working for the MPS, which is the bigger, broader company under which dental protection falls, I noticed that the the organization doesn't do as good a job as it could, as I believe it could, in spreading the word or the awareness of this particular point. And maybe it's because in my previous career I was an attorney, a practicing attorney, and I would be the attorney for the insurance companies. And I can tell you, when it comes to HPCSA matters, with dental protection, if the complaint against you is at the HPCSA, we are likely going to assist you. Um, and I don't want to say, and I'm using the word deliberately likely, because I can't say we will always assist you, because there's always cases where we might not be able to, but we're almost always in, right? And I just want to explain it to you in this way, in the next slide. So the first bullet, right? It says medical aid investigation, and it says usually no. Why I want to pause on this one is because if you recall earlier, I said that there are some things that are outside the scope of benefit of membership. One of them are medical aid queries and billing queries, like technical billing queries about, for example, can I use a 8101 or whatever, that kind of thing. If a dental protection member comes to us with those kind of things, I say to them, look, unfortunately, this is outside the scope of the scope of membership benefits, and outside of my expertise. I don't have any clue about that. But if you're a SADA member, Dr. Tanesha Parbu, go and speak to her because she's the expert in that. Even if you're not a member of SADA, maybe contact them, see if they can steer you in the right direction. Because SADA probably share the same ethos of trying to help, as best as possible. But if you come to me and you say XYZ insurance company, I mean medical aid company is investigating me, I'll have to say to you, look, unfortunately, we can't help with that because it's a billing issue, it's a medical aid issue, it's outside the scope. I'll refer you elsewhere. However, if that medical aid investigation eventually ends up at the HPCSA, as some of them do, because sometimes the medical aid company will investigate and then lodge a complaint against the clinician at the HPCSA, then you can come back and say, hey, it's now at the HPCSA, and the MPS will most likely assist. So even though we couldn't help when it was an investigation, because it goes to your regulator, and because we see the regulator as so important, because it can have a knock-on effect, as I mentioned earlier, dental protection will help, will likely help. I've got to say that as a disclaimer, but because there's always situations where we might not be able to help. For example, if you were not a member of dental protection at the time, because those are one of the requirements, right? The third bullet, again, following that theme, if it's a personal conduct matter, and I want to give an example. So let's just say you're a clinician and I'm using small town because I can relate to this. You're a clinician in a small town and you're at a public place, like the shops or something, and you get into an argument in a fight and you swear somebody, and they know that you're the town doctor or whatever it is, and they write to you and say you were very rude to me at Pick and Pay, and I don't like it. If you come to me, technically I'll have to look at the membership rules and say, look, this is personal conduct. It has nothing to do with your clinical work, and therefore, unfortunately, would love to assist you but can't. And I'd refer you. I'd say here, maybe you can go to a lawyer. Maybe you can ask somebody at SADA to help. I don't know if they'll be able to, but we can't help with personal conduct matters if they're just informal complaints. But let's just say that same situation happened and the patient went to the HPCSA. We'd likely be able to assist you. So even when you come to me with a request for assistance for a medical aid investigation or a personal conduct matter, so bullet 1 and bullet 3, when I write to you and I say, I'm sorry, I can't help, but here's where I suggest you go, I always end off my letters by saying, if this matter escalates to an HPCSA complaint, please come back to me so that I can ask dental protection to reconsider. And generally what will happen is they will reconsider and assist. And that to me is a unique selling point. I'm using the word unique selling point of DPL, is that they will help because they see the value in defending a regulatory complaint that much that they would be flexible in that regard. This is the golden thread of the evening, and I'm going to say it explicitly. You pay for this membership. You're a DPL. If you are a DPL member, you're paying for it. I can never understand why you won't want to use something that you pay for. I can. I'll explain a bit later, but just use it. If you're paying for it, use it. there's so many clinicians that know me personally and will WhatsApp me and say, "Hey, I've got this thing," and I say to them, "Aren't you with DPL? Just write in. Let's deal with it formally." And when I say formally, it's not to put you on the in the hot seat or to make a record of it. Of course, I want that, but I want to be able to give you the formal advice that comes backed with my colleagues and all everything that comes with being a DPL member, as opposed to just chatting to you on WhatsApp. And you'll be surprised how many people I say this to, and they tell me, "Look, yeah, don't worry, I'll write in or I'll call in," and then it never happens until like months later. And again, DPL doesn't really hold that against people, but I want to start that culture or to instill that, to say, just write in. It's not going to have a negative effect on things. I'm going back to the slide because this is, I remember that I was supposed to mention this, but I didn't. I do have my suspicions as to why people sometimes are reluctant to contact us. And there is that, I don't know whether it's a myth or an urban legend or whatever the term is, but a lot of people tend to think that, like when you make a claim with your insurance company, Casey, if you're still around, if you're with your car insurance, people think that their premiums go up because now there's been an accident or something like that.
Yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, so similarly, I think people think that if they contact us for advice, it's going to go on their name on their record of having used DPL, and therefore their membership fees go up. I can assure you that doesn't happen. We have, and we all know it, especially on the medical side, there's diligent members that will write in every other week, and we actually we enjoy those types of members because we'd rather you be cautious and ask and use something that you're paying for than to not be sure and just feel like I don't want to trouble DPL or I don't want to get on their radar. Nobody is going to penalize you for asking for advice, and you can ask anything genuinely. I enjoy it, so please do. Just call in or write in, and I'll get into how you're going to contact us because that's how granular I want to get on this. Right. So I wanted to touch on this because not to be condescending or judgmental, um, but it's important for people to practically know, right, what I see every week. Right? And it's the biggest mistake. It's clinicians that try to fix things themselves before calling us. Um, and it might be as a result of being reluctant to report things in the first place. That might be one reason. It might just be that, you know, with that type of personality as dentists and healthcare workers, I feel, where we think we can deal with things, right? When there's an email that comes in, we want to respond quickly, resolve it. But I would just say, and I know it's easier said than done because I battle with this myself when I'm facing struggles, is I want to respond immediately, but I just want to say pause, remember you've got DPL, and just contact us, right? This is what I see happening all the time. Well, not all the time, but often. Offering refunds. We see a lot of anesthetists do this also. Side note, but a lot of anesthetists offer to pay for dental treatment when there's been when there's been dental damage after they've intubated. Um, just don't do it. I mean, I know it's tempting, but write to us or call us. The apologetic emails, I put it in inverted commas because when clinicians write to me and send me all the correspondence that they've engaged in before the time that they came to me for assistance, I get to read all those emails, right? And I see right at the genesis there's an apology, but it's not a real apology. It's like I'm sorry if, or you know it really doesn't help, and of course that's why the patient then gets frustrated and escalates, and then the dentist decides, okay, let's go to DPL. The third bullet, it doesn't really happen that often. It's a potential thing, admitting liability prematurely. It's a potential thing that could happen. I don't see it that much with dentistry, but um, it can happen. And then the other thing is, the last thing is engaging directly with the threatening patient. You you don't always have to, and there are ways to sort of soften the blow, uh, depending on what's been said. And the more you dig yourself into it, the less opportunity you have to soften the blow. So I always say, come in early, even if there's a hint of frustration. Contact us. Everything that you write to the patient, right? WhatsApps, letters, they use it. The patients use it. This is not a fear mongering thing. This is what really happens. And I should have amended the slide slightly because nowadays, more often, it's voice notes that get sent. And the dentist doesn't know that the patient's been recording. And I see that often now with HPCSA complaints where they submit the voice note. Um, and so just assume that whatever you've written or whatever you've voice noted to the patient or podcasted to them, they bring it back eventually. So again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but just come to us. I mean, there's no harm. There's literally no harm. If you come to me early, I can always just say to you, look, I don't think there's anything for you to do right now. Thanks for letting us know. We'll keep this file open. We'll park it off. Let us know if it escalates. Rather do that than the alternative, which is, to just run it yourself and then come to us when it comes to a head. Here's another thing. And my old colleague and friend Alistair used to always harp on about this, but the incomplete records thing, it's still happening in 2026, where things like consent's not documented, risks are not recorded, even though they are discussed. And we do take your word for it. If you say you've discussed the risks, then we assume you've discussed it. But it would just help if it was even a one-liner to say discussed risks, but not even that sometimes. I am seeing recently, very, very recently, some super comprehensive notes, no doubt with the assistance of AI platforms like Heidi and things, which I think is great. I wanted to put that last bullet in there. If it's not written down, it didn't happen, just because this is my favorite myth, because you'll go to a lot of these types of talks where people will say this, and technically speaking, it's not true that if it's not written down, it didn't happen, because you don't necessarily have to have written it down for it to have happened, but it always helps. And I can understand why indemnifiers and lawyers will put those words in their slides, because it just makes the defense that much easier. Right. And this is super common. And I can relate to it, because I would probably do the same thing if I was a practicing clinician and somebody called my integrity or my clinical skills into question. It's so much easier for me as a person watching from the outside to say, sleep on it and don't respond. But you're the one that's there dealing with the patient and patients before them, and then getting this email in the middle of a hectic case and then wanting to respond. But that's the whole point. That's why I have this job where I don't see patients. I'm here and I can give you that, and my colleagues can give you that objective outsider perspective, and just put your hand. There's a meme where there's somebody about to type something in anger, and then there's a cat that puts its hand on the person's typing hand and says, just pause. That's my role. Well, it's one of the hardest parts of my job, but it's why I'm there. We feel personally attacked. So just remember, I'm paying for that thing. So let me just write to Yash. Let's see what he says, right? Now, when to contact us? Don't wait for a formal letter. Firstly, you don't have to wait for a letter of demand, but you don't even have to wait for an email. Don't wait for HPCSA notification. Even if a patient has uttered something to you and they say you're going to hear from me, because that happens often. Say to you, yeah, no, you'll hear from me, or we're going to contact the council. I can understand why you'd want to just wait and see, because maybe they'll calm down, they'll go home and cool off, and maybe it'll disappear. And sometimes it does. But even if that happens, write to me. Say, yes, this is the situation. This is what happened on this date. I just want to let you know. Please keep it on your file. And we love those kinds of emails for many reasons. The first one is that there's not much for us to do. So we open a file, we say, thank you so much for letting us know. If anything escalates, let us know. We'll diarize ahead. And so it's not too difficult for us to handle. And at least you will have that peace of mind knowing that if it does escalate, because it really does in like a month or two, it often does, then you come back to me and say, hey, Yash, I referred to that email. It's kicked off now. Let's figure it out. And by then, I might have already formulated a plan or said to you, okay, if this happens, we'll have this up our sleeve or that up our sleeve, right? Early contact, better outcomes. I promise you that this is so true. It really is. Not marketing, this is the reality of how these cases unfold. And the earlier that we get involved, the more options we have. So, if you wait till you're deep into a complaint, it really does limit how we can or what we can do. Here's some of the triggers, and if any of these things happen, I might have mentioned them. Don't wait. You don't need to be sure it'll escalate. That's our job. We'll figure it out. We'll say to you, we often say to clinicians, it looks like there's nothing much for you to do now, so let's just wait and see. So if a patient obviously informally expresses dissatisfaction, treatment complication. Now this is not, and I don't want people to confuse it with like a reporting obligation. Because there are some insurance products or companies would say, if there's an adverse incident, you must report it. As far as I'm aware, we don't have that kind of requirement. So I'm not saying it to you that you must do it to protect yourself in that sense. And remember, again, if you're not a DPL member, your insurance company might have its own rules and requirements. So, check with them. Remember, I'm talking about dental protection here. If something goes wrong, you can just tell me. Write to us. This is a situation. This happened. I don't think anything's happened. I've discussed it with the patient. The patient's aware. And the patient's going to that endodontist in inverted commas, because trust me, I know there's no such thing as an endodontist in South Africa, technically speaking. But then at least we know and we save it. Third bullet doesn't often happen in dentistry, but I've seen it a lot more. This year, I've seen more patient requests for records than I think I might have seen the whole of last year, where patients are asking for copies of records. Let us know, just so we can have it on file and be prepared. And I want to stop there. It's unrelated, but if a patient asks you for copies of records, people, please don't make their life difficult. Just let them have the copies. Treat it professionally and move on. What their motive is behind that request, we can speculate over as much as we want, and perhaps that's what we might do if you write to us and let us know. But don't use the law, in inverted commas, as a reason to delay things, because patients get annoyed when there's a delay. They know they want their records. They're entitled to it. Just give them the copies and move on. Okay. Then next bullet, if they mention lawyers or HPCSA, like I said, if there's a negative online post, or definitely if you receive formal correspondence, right? Now, a lot of the time, clinicians WhatsApp me and say, "Yes, I just want to chat about something. It's nothing serious, but I just want to talk to you about it." And that's fine. I'm happy to do it because I enjoy this kind of work. But you can still have that kind of informal discussion with me in my professional and formal capacity if you're a DPL member. And the beauty of it is then everybody's protected, because I can make notes, save it to the file. You can say that you've notified DPL and they have it on record. And then when it does escalate in future, I don't have to go and look at my WhatsApp, because my WhatsApp is my personal phone. I don't have a work phone. And I don't discuss, and I always tell members or even non-members, do not send me anything to do with the patient, because I'm not processing patient-related stuff on my personal phone. I don't want to get in trouble with the information regulator. So if we do it the formal way, we can call it a formal informal query where we can just chat on the phone. We don't have to open a file. Both both formal and informal queries are fine. If you're a member and you're paying for it, let's do it. Okay? And I don't judge. I actually I tip my hat off to all of you that are in clinical practice. Because as some of you will know, I couldn't handle it when I left. And so you guys are like heroes and inspiration to me. So I don't judge. It's a tough job, and it fulfills me to be able to help. So anyway, let's get into the nitty gritty, right? How to contact us. Please save this number. Write it down and save it. Don't I would in an ideal world I would say Google dental protection contact. Unfortunately, as you all know now, it's 2026 and there's the thing called search engine optimization and AI results and all that stuff. Sometimes if you search for dental protection contact, it'll take you through to SADA's website and you might end up calling their membership team because SADA does administer some of the membership admin for DPL. It's not only SADA, there's other organizations that do it. But the point is that don't Google it. Just take this number from this webinar, save it in your phone, and save it as dental protection, 0800 014 780. And then the second thing, again, similar principle, similar story applies. If you Google it, you might not get this one. This is the one for when if there's a dental legal matter. If a patient complains, if you've got an HPCSA issue, if there's a request for records, you're gonna write to this email address. So save that. And I'm going to give you more details later about what needs to happen exactly. If you call us, you're going to have to expect a few things. The first thing is that there's going to be this very formal sounding pre-recorded message by one of my colleagues and friends who talks about, these calls may be recorded in option 1, option 2. So you make sure you press the option that gets you through to dental protection, right? But here's the part that, and I understand this, trust me, it irritates our members that we have to ask these questions. And my colleague Roslyn is probably smiling now. I can't see her, but she's smiling. And I get it. It's annoying to have to give, all sorts of bits of information. But these are the three things that you must just, if you can remember to have them ready beforehand. It's the membership number, your date of birth, and you see, I should have deleted that because it's not a registration number, but address or cell phone number. They'll ask you. You have to pass 3. But just be mentally prepared that you're going to have to give this stuff because DPL, and as I mentioned earlier, they're a UK-based organization. And I don't know how relevant that is, but I think it is relevant because in South Africa, we tend to be a little less stringent on security checks at places, unfortunately. And that's why we're victims of cybercrime to such an extent. The DPL in the UK are very strict on this. If a member cannot give us these 3 items of identification checks, my colleagues have been told to say, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to either write in or you're going to have to call back. I can't discuss any further. And I know this irritates, especially the specialists, especially the surgeons. So none of you guys here, because busy, got theater and all that stuff, and you don't have time to find your membership number. But it's a reasonable request, and it's not just an academic thing because we have had patients call in pretending to be members. And these are patients who have active claims, so are actively suing a doctor, and they try and pretend to be the doctor to get information. It's happened. We've also had scam attempts. So the point I want to make is that you're going to have this information ready, and please don't be annoyed with my colleagues if they have to turn you away because you don't have it. I'm really sorry to say that. And sometimes they'll even call you and ask you these questions. But just be prepared, right? Bear with us. Worst case, we'll call you back. Or you can ask for me to call you back, and if I can't call back, I'll email. So that's what to do when you call that 0800 number. Now, if you've got a complaint, these are important things. The date of the treatment. Why the dates are so important is because even though, as I said earlier, DPL will try and help you with every little thing under the sun as far as possible, one of the strict rules is, and understandably so, is that if you're not a member at the time of the incident, unfortunately, we can't help because it would be unfair to people that are paying and whose risk is priced into the product for the membership fund to be depleted on people that are non-members. So those dates are critical, extremely critical. You must check your notes and have them ready. Have a brief summary of what happened, have all the correspondence and your clinical notes and records. And I put a star next to the clinical notes and records because it's a pet peeve of mine. So I'm letting you into letting you all be insiders in the world of a dental legal consultant. But a pet peeve of mine is when people write in and just attach everything. Firstly, that's wrong because you're processing. We're not authorized to process your patient's personal information. They haven't given you permission. So there could be POPI implications, there could be confidentiality implications. So don't do that, firstly. And then secondly, just from a practical perspective, you know what happened in this matter. It would be unfair to expect me or some of my colleagues to have to troll through everything and figure it out. And that just slows the process down. So have the records ready, but do not send them unless we ask for it. That's critical. And then what happens after you contact us? A file is open, right? If you call us on the phone, we might not necessarily open a file. I might be able to give you the generic or general advice over the phone, and it's done quickly. But if it requires more insight or more detailed discussion or collaboration, then we open a file and we'll have an initial call if we need to. Meet members on Teams. I try my best to go to the members practice if I can, but I'm based in Joburg, so limited there by my geography, but I would try by all means. And then we work out a strategy. It's really a collaborative thing. It's the most fun part of my job is meeting members and figuring things out. I don't have the answers. You will give me the answers and we'll work it out together. And then we carry on through the matter together. And you can keep me updated as it goes on. I'm getting even more detailed now because this form is a crucial thing. It's called the request for assistance form. And this form can mean the difference between me being able to help you within a day or two versus, and I'm not exaggerating, sometimes it's been like I've had to wait a month or two. It's usually on the medical side, not in the dental, because the medics tend to write to us and forget, but we need this information in this form. I'll go through the form now. But this is the most efficient route to get formal assistance from us. You complete this form that I'm going to show you now. You email it to that email address. The first one, casemanagement@dentalprotection.org.za. Now, this part, I haven't been told to share, but I'm sharing it because, in my experience, it helps. I'm not supposed to be giving out my personal email address, but I'm willing to do it. For one reason is to try and speed up the process. Because if you email that form to the case management address, it goes to a central inbox and it's dealt with by an admin team and all sorts of things happen in the background, which takes, understandably, an hour or two, sometimes more. And some of these cases, you're dentists. Most of you are dentists on this call, and you're expecting quick answers because you're the CEOs of your own practices, most of you. And CEOs expect quick turnaround, right? But unfortunately, admin does bring in some delay. And so I'm happy for you to copy me directly. So you can take down that email address and just don't tell my colleagues that I've given it out to you. I know this webinar is recorded and it's going to be on YouTube. So I say that tongue in cheek, but I'm happy for you to do that. Just copy my personal address. So at least it's on my radar. And but there's something very important with this because we don't give out our personal addresses. If you Google me, and go to the website, you won't find my address. But the most important thing, and I'm asking, and I will reply quite abruptly if you don't do this, is that when you send in that form and you copy me, you make sure you always address it to case management. If it just comes to me, I'm going to reply and say, I'm really sorry, but please can you send this to case management? It's an important thing because sometimes I'm on leave, or I might be at a webinar, presenting a webinar or whatever, and it's important for it to go to a central inbox because we do have people in the background that can also check and can also flag with other colleagues, maybe even in the UK or wherever. So if you write to me directly and you don't copy case management, I'm going to reply back and say, sorry, please send it to the right channel. So don't abuse me, please. And then the second thing is, please do not send me any patient information at all. I'm limiting it to the form. The form is what you start off with. You fill it in, and I'll show you the form next. And then afterwards, I will let you know, or we will let you know what we need you to send in, because there are anonymization requirements and all sorts of stuff. And the last thing you or I want to be doing is breaching POPI regulations and things like that. Here's the form. And Casey, I know there's half an hour left, so I'm going to start speeding through, but I really wanted to get into this detail deliberately. There's a first thing there on that page, membership number. It's not your DP number. It's not a DP number. It usually starts with SA or DSA or TT if you're a therapist. Find that number somewhere, fill it in, and don't just skim through the rest, because those items are what DPL uses to verify your identity. And I feel so terrible when I see this happening, and it's not a criticism of the clinicians, it's just us. I think it's our South African way of doing things. Like, we're so used to filling in forms where we look and we see, okay, what's important? Let me fill in the important stuff. But actually, everything on this form is important. Everything. Don't even leave out your postcode, because they'll have it on their system. And the last thing you want happening is them writing back to you after a few hours and you're expecting some sort of help. But all they're saying to you is, sorry, Dr. So-and-so, unfortunately, you didn't meet the security checks. Please, can you answer X, Y, and Z? It's super frustrating for you. I totally get it. But I also understand where DPL are coming from with this. So fill it in as comprehensively as possible. Patient year of birth, we need to know how old the patient is, because sometimes it's important if it's a minor or not. And then check all the relevant boxes and make sure that you've anonymized things. You don't ever send us unanonymized things unless we ask you. We will specifically ask you, because there are certain types of cases where you can send in the stuff without anonymizing. Right, so after this webinar, here's another, and I'm probably going to regret this, but after this webinar, you can email me and just say, Yash, please send me that form. And I will personally email you the form, the blank form. And you can keep it. You save my email address, and I'll tell you the case management email address. And we take it from there. I really am trying to improve efficiency as much as possible without compromising privacy and without compromising your POPI obligations and things like that. So I expect to get a couple of emails after this and prepare myself. Some misconceptions about dental protection membership. Here's the one: if I call too often, my subscription goes up. I already dealt with this. Most common one I find, and I know it stops people from calling, because also we all have a bit of healthy skepticism, and you might think, even though Yash is saying that, they're still going to hold it against. I can guarantee you they don't, especially for the advice files. Like, you ask to your heart's content. Trouble us. So that's not true. I'm saying it again. I put this slide in so many times and I've got a note here to say repeat for emphasis. Yeah. So just do it. But there are things that affect subscription rates, to be transparent. Of course, like, some of you will know this because some of you will have moved from not doing implant work to implant work. So, the type of your practice does influence how much you pay DPL. And that's all about risk, right? So there's that. There are instances where, and it's very, very uncommon, but I've seen it happen, and I've only heard about it on dental. I've seen it happen on medical, where if I'm going to use the example that I've got, like an obstetrician keeps on getting the same type of claim, as in they keep getting sued for XYZ over years, then it flags. There's a flag on the system, and and with good reason, because remember, this is a membership organization. So the last thing you want is somebody who is reckless, that is using your funds that you contribute to as a member. So dental protection and the MPS does have an obligation, or a duty to make sure that whatever funds you're contributing are not used recklessly. And so what they do in those cases is they refer it to a committee, and sometimes the committee will increase subscriptions, or I've even seen membership being terminated, but I've only heard of it in dental. I've never seen it myself. And personally, I've never seen it myself, yeah. And then the last one says years qualified. I mean, there is one membership grade. And again, I'm not the expert on membership grades. My colleague, who couldn't be here tonight, she's the one to contact, and I can give you her details if you need it. But for example, I think DPL doesn't have a grade that um, assists with implant work for the first year after ComServe. I speak under correction, but things like that. I really wanted to run this home. Eh? Use us, that's what we're here for. Right? And then I wanted to talk about what we help with and what we don't. I touched on it earlier, but here's the things. I'm just going to say it again. HPCSA complaints, medical legal reports, and you see, I should have thought better when I put this together, but medical legal report, not in the sense of you being an expert, even though we can assist with that from what I understand. But what I meant was, if a if a colleague comes to you and says, "Hey, doc, this patient is asking me to do so and X, Y, Z. Can you just give me a report?" We can help you with that. You can draft it. We can look at it and assist. Obviously, not clinically, but we'll look at it and say, "Okay, this might be irrelevant. That might be conjecture, opinion, things like that." Regulatory investigations. That's fine. Media and social media issues. I was surprised with this point. I've seen it happen once, and it's where there was media interest in a medical doctor. I think one of these newspapers or tabloids contacted the doctor asking for comment on something before they published. And I thought this is going to be out of scope, or we can't assist, only to realize that actually medical protection does help. And there's a media team which helped that doctor respond to the publication that was going to go out. So even that, adverse outcomes and complications, and then reimbursement of fees. That to me is the unique selling point, the secret sauce, as Dr. Mansoor called it on my podcast when I interviewed him a while ago. It's such a useful mechanism to avoid things escalating. And what we don't help with, employment disputes. Somebody contacted me recently saying they've had an issue with their previous employer who's not paying their commission. And again, this was a WhatsApp conversation, and I said, okay, look, I'm really sorry, I can't help. I would tell you to write in, but I know it's pointless you writing in, because I'm just going to say we can't help. And I referred the person to people, so we can't help with employment disputes, billing complaints. And here it's a bit technical, because if the complaint is strictly billing, like if somebody comes to you, and I don't think this ever happens, but maybe it does, where somebody says, why did you bill me 8-1 or whatever, you should have done this. It happens a lot on medical side. I hardly see it on dental, but I'm sure it does. We can't help with that because we're not experts in billing, and we can't really um, advise. It's out of scope. We can't assist. Similarly, we can't help with you chasing debts. I would refer you on. Um, so we don't help with that. Commercial issues, again, not if you've got this great idea to open up a center somewhere and you want to know about whether and it might even seem to you like it's medical legal. You might ask if we can look at whether your consents are in place. We'll say to you, look, consult with your lawyers because that's part of a commercial enterprise. We can't assist with that. And then personal conduct, I gave the example earlier about the altercation in Pick and Pay or whatever. Can't really help. It has to be clinically related. Yeah. So those are just some of the things. And but even if you do, as I said, if you do come to us for things that we can't help with, we are trained, and we're not supposed to say to you, sorry, we can't help. Cheers. We say, we're really sorry we can't help. This is not within the scope. But have you considered speaking to SADA? Have you considered contacting whoever, or whatever association, or these lawyers, etc., etc. So we're not gonna. We try our best not to leave you stuck. Um, But at the same time, we're not going to mislead you or lead you on to say we can help, and then at the last minute drop you. That's not the goal there. So do's and don'ts, and Casey, I'm going to breeze through these. Contact us early, document everything contemporaneously, preserve all relevant records, respond professionally. Okay, that's easier said than done, but that's where we come in. Follow our guidance. Yep. Sometimes members don't, and that's fine. We can't force you to follow anything. But don't come back to me in 3 months, and then I'm not going to say I told you so, but I'll say it very professionally. Yes, and keep everything confidential. Please, again, don't WhatsApp me, don't email me patient stuff. Please, I'll delete it, and I'll tell you to please delete it also. I've done that a few times. Don't tell patients. I see this often, and it's used as a what's the word? As a time buying mechanism or as a buffer, where clinicians will say, "Look, thanks for the complaint, but I need to speak to dental protection." And even different, they say, "Oh, I need to refer this to SADA." If you get a complaint, you don't need to refer anything to anybody. What you need to do is respond to the complaint, right? That's what you should do, and that's best practice. But don't let them know about the involvement of third parties, because firstly, and I'm not saying this to that you must pull the wool over your patient's eyes. You don't need to have an excuse to buy time. You can always say, I'm looking at your email, I'll get back to you. Or you don't even have to respond. Patients are not always expecting a response immediately. But the problem that comes in, if you do mention dental protection or SADA, for example, is that patients then go on Google and they'll come across this SADA mediation process, and they'll come across all sorts of things, and they will have heightened expectations. And that's not what you want to do. You want to manage their expectations and keep them cautiously low. And some of these patients might even think that, okay, now that there's an indemnifier involved, I can get money here. And they start getting creative. So it's best to just pause on both sides, get to us, and we can help you with wording. Holding wording is our specialty. We can help you with wording on how to send a holding response, right? And then, yes, don't alter records. I've seen this happen a lot. Don't ignore the correspondence. They will escalate to the HPCSA. Happens a lot. And then don't discuss publicly or on WhatsApp or anything like that. And then I've touched on this already. So again, I gave it a slide of its own because I've been seeing that happen a lot, and it's awkward because then I have to have an awkward discussion with a colleague, as in you, a member, to say, I can see this happen, and there's a different pen, or the metadata is not metadataing. So just rather not put a line through it and date it and sign it. Casey, it's probably worthwhile now pausing here because all of this is just repetition. And if you want to jump in, if there's questions, I don't know. But I see it's 22. And let me just look at this slide here. The HPCSA one is important. I'm just going to get to that. Because this I also see very often, especially ones that go to the HPCSA's mediator, where they say to you, you've got 10 days to reply. And I don't know whether the council gives sometimes calls members beforehand. I understand that they do nowadays, and they give the clinician the impression that it's an informal thing. Let's just get it resolved. And then what happens is the clinician understandably accepts what the HPCSA tells them and responds. And then the patient doesn't accept the explanation, and then it becomes a formal thing, and then we could have helped from the beginning, but we are com- compelled to only assist at a later stage. And again, another good thing is I've never seen DPL decline assistance to a member who's done that. But I know that if you're with an insurance company, there's a high chance that they might, because I think what comes with those contracts is that you must notify your insurer within a reasonable period. So to respond and then only come to them at a later stage, not a good idea. Even with us, it's not a good idea. So don't do it. But I just wanted to mention that. And then Casey, I don't know if you're saying something, but I could hear a little bit in the background. Mm, but otherwise, I'll just go through these last few slides and then wrap up. Fee disputes, right? This is, I would say 80%, 80 plus percent of the cases we deal with are fee disputes. And we don't see them as billing complaints if they are related to things like informed consent. So if a patient says to you, I didn't expect to pay 10,000, I'm only going to pay 5,000. We won't take that type of matter and say, sorry, doctor, we can't help you because it's about billing. Because that's not really a billing issue. That is a fee dispute. And when you look at it, it boils down to informed consent. So we do help with those. Uh, so I'm glad I put this slide in because I don't want people to get the impression that if it has to do with money, we can't help. On the contrary, we help a lot when it has to do with money. It's just that it can't be a very specific billing type complaint. In the same story, call us early. Treatment complications, contemporaneous notes are critical. Critical. Be honest with the patient. Early engagement makes a difference. This I cannot emphasize this. And when I say early engagement, I mean it both ways. Being able to engage early with the patient if they express some form of dissatisfaction, but on the other end, as I mean it vis-a-vis engaging with us early, because then at least we can work it out together sooner rather than later. And this is what I want. I want people to stick. And if I was not a United supporter, I would have said, you'll never walk alone. But I just decided to keep it neutral and say you're not alone, and we're here. And it's important to say this. We don't judge. Like, who am I to judge? Most of the doctors, well, I won't say most. A lot of the doctors that come to us for assistance have decades more experience that I have. They've forgotten things that I never even learned. And that's not my role to second guess you or to criticize. It's really to figure out, are we vulnerable here? Do we need to address something? Do we need to concede something? Do we want to be wasting your time and the patient's time over something that inevitably is doomed to failure, or is something that you don't want to discuss? You don't want a panel of your peers to look at and discuss. It's not a case that you would want to take to the HPCSA to demonstrate how good you are. Then why do we have to fight with it? Why do we waste the patient's time and yours? Let's figure it out. So that's what we're there for. Early, honest, confidential, and then again, when in doubt, contact us. You pay for it. Why not? And here's the question slide. Casey, you still around, or did you fall asleep?
I'm still here. I'm
Yeah,
still here.
yeah,
And I would, yeah, so that we don't, I'm sure you at the end here.
yeah. I'm
Let
done.
me take it for now. Thank you so much. Um, as a lay person, but also as a CEO of SADA, where we deal with the same membership of DP, I think what I got is that we can pray, and I'm summarizing from my side. We can pray, we can hope, we can plan that nothing goes wrong, but eventually something goes wrong. When it does go wrong, it is easier and it's encouraged that you contact, if you're a member of DP, contact DP at your earliest. Don't think that by contacting DP regularly or at your earliest is going to affect your profile. That was very important for me, Dr. Naidu, because I did not know that myself. This was very, very important. It will not affect your profile. DP is a mutual organization, or scheme, if I can use that word, it's not like your insurance company. It will not affect. In actual fact, if I were to summarize what Dr. Naidu is saying, he loves it when you contact them early. So do so early. But in contacting them early, please, the fact that you studied with him, you met him at Checkers the other day, or you know him from playing paddle or something else, that is okay, but you must still follow process, due process, which is use the correct telephone number, use the correct email addresses which he has given to you, and follow process. And I want to say, when it comes to this, I know that from SADA's perspective, we also administer this where members come directly to us, and then we send the cases through to DP. Normally, Ruth, who deals with these issues, when she sends back email to say, but you have not followed process, this you have not provided, this and this, people don't take kindly to it. But I'm glad that today you mentioned this. Follow due process so that your case is not lost. Don't use the knowledge or the knowledge or your acquaintance to Dr. Naidu as a reason why you send him things on the side. But in all of this, Dr. Naidu says they will help you basically in everything. However, there's also limitations. And he went through the limitations of what they can't do and what they can do. Most importantly for me, I want to say this is where part of SADA comes in. For instance, if it comes to employment, SADA will assist you with that advice. If it comes to billing complaints, I can tell you that's what we specialize in. So those are the things that you must bring to SADA. He mentioned Dr. Tinesha Pabu earlier on. Clinical@sada.co.za. That's where you must go. We will help you. And maybe let me add on that. Even if you ask what you may think is a stupid question when it comes assist you. It's better for you to do it right so that you don't get your billing rejected by the schemes, but that it is done appropriately and you get your money on time. So with the limitation, he then adds one last point, which is to say, in all your dealings, be ethical. Be ethical as to your best ability, because it is easier to help a person who has been trying to be ethical, but something went wrong. It's easier that way. And by this, I've referred to don't change your notes to fit in the situation after the fact. Rather show it as it is, and they will assist you better that way, because then they have and so that's more or less. Now there was a question, two questions which your colleague and I tried to look at. The first one came from Dr. Murray, and Dr. Mare, I didn't understand what you were asking, and I had asked you to clarify. I did not see it back. And the second one was from Dr. Odendal, whom I know very well. And I see that it's been responded to online by your colleague. So, sorry, I do apologize. By your colleague. So that is done. I don't see any further questions.
Okay,
But guys, yeah, go ahead.
okay, Casey, what I want to tell you is, I'm glad, maybe it's a good opportunity, but questions that when it comes to dental legal dilemmas or questions or queries, right? I really mean it when I say that there's not often a simple, straightforward answer. So I saw some questions about Google reviews and things like that, right? But when somebody writes to me with that type of query, the first thing I want to do is I want to see that Google review, right? I want to see that Google review. The second thing is I will look at your page and I'd look at all the other reviews and I'd weigh that in context and I'd say to you, look, your page has an average rating of 4.9. This Google review that you spoke about was buried on page 3. These are your options. I will actually speak to the member and say, what is your goal? What do you want out of this? Do you want to respond to this patient? Because some clinicians will say to us, actually, I don't care, but I've gotten this thing and I want to let you know. Others will say, no, I do not want to be defamed here. This is nonsense. This is the situation. This is what really happened. I want to go and tell them what I want to give my side of the story. So behind every little small dilemma, there's so much to unpack and then give a tailored answer. I can't give and that's why I don't like these types of Q&As here, because as you said, you'll need more information, and you even figured that out on one of your questions that you were dealing with. And that's why I really enjoy what I do, because I want to try and meet with you and speak with you and figure it out. Or I'll write 5 letters and sometimes the dentist might get irritated. Like, why is Yash asking a different question now? But once I can get the full picture, then I'll know how I can advise you in your best interest. And I can know what you
Yeah.
actually want from it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I want to take this to an end, and so he has dealt with the issue of the Google reviews, and I know that his colleague has also Roslane has also given some comment there, and one important comment I think from Dr. Lowe was that the HPCA has guidelines concerning changing of records. It's important that you check on that and maybe use that as a reference. And we also say, yes, please do look at that so that you don't do something that is amiss. Um, I don't see any further questions. So if there are no further questions, Dr. Naidu, last words before we close?
No, thanks very much. It's great to be here. So I think it's the first one this year without my friend and colleague Alistair. I miss having him here. He used to always laugh at me for having bad lighting. So I hope it was okay. And yeah, thanks everyone. See you soon.
All right.
Thank you.
We
Yes.
thought the lightning was one of your way of creating an aura around you.
Yeah, that I'll go with that. And I'm a paid up SADA member, so yes to both.
You check. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further questions, thank you to the 300 plus members that have been attending this webinar today. I hope that you have gained some insight. And I think most importantly, if you forget something or you're not sure of something, I think there might be a question there. Just ask the question. It's always the best way to ask the question. So thank you so much. We would like to then conclude this meeting by thanking Dr. Naidu and his colleague and everyone else that has been supporting us on the background, including you guys as members. May God bless you. The meeting is closed.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.